Parental Alienation Awareness Day. And what does this stand for? This stands for millions of parents all over the world who have been alienated from their children. They have had their human right taken away, their human right to have a loving relationship with their children. My alienation started in 1974 when my husband called me up when I was in the hospital and said, "I'm going to take your son and you're never going to see him again." Now, this is not a normal person, and nobody's ever going to convince me that people that do this are normal people, because they're not. So I had to search for him. It took me 30 years. Every single day I searched and had 16 private investigators. I lived in New Jersey and he lived in New York. And what I did when I got out of the hospital, I went to where he worked at American Airlines as a computer analyst, computer programmer. And so I went there and I asked them, do you know, is my husband here? It was my ex-husband, Steven Schippenberg, here? And they said, no, he doesn't work here anymore. And I said, I knew that was a lie. I said, okay, this is not a story between two parents. This entails more. This entails the friends and the relatives and the story that they lay and behind, and convince everybody else that this other person is a horrible person and that they should never see their child again. It's like a cult. They bring them into a cult. Every place this child turns, it's the same story repeated, including the teachers, and alienation also from judges. So I didn't know where he lived in Manhattan, so what I did was I would walk the streets of New York carrying a picture of my son and asking people if they had seen him. I got a few leads, but then I realized that on my separation paper I had an address. So I went to that address, 166 East 34th Street, and I would do a surveillance on that address as much as I could. And then one day, my ex-husband came out with my son in the car, and he drove down the street, and I ran after him and caught him at a red light, and I tried to get my son out of the car, but the car was locked, and he sped away. So then I would go there periodically, and I went there another day, and he had a doorman, so that's why I never really went inside. But I slipped past the doorman and went upstairs to the apartment and knocked on the door and called my son's name. And inside was a lady screaming on the top of her lungs, and I realized that was my ex-husband's girlfriend. So I went downstairs, and my ex-husband was downstairs. So I said, "Where is my son? Where is he?" And he started choking me, so someone called the police, and they came and they said, "Don't move or we'll shoot you." They put us in handcuffs and put us in a police car and took us down to the Tombs, the jail in New York. My ex-husband got his attorney, and we came before the judge. And the judge said, "What is this about?" And I said, "I have custody of my son, and I'd like to know where he is." And the lawyer whispered to the judge, and the judge said, "Oh, he's well taken care of. Case dismissed." So then I realized this is about attorneys and a lot of money. So then after that I said, okay, that's not my territory. I live in New Jersey. So I'll have him arrested and I'll bring him to New Jersey. So I had him extradited from New York to New Jersey, and it came before the judge, and he brought his lawyer again. And the lawyer let him go. So then I started my search, and I searched all over New York, from one address to another, and from one address to another. I was always right, but I was one step behind. The first private investigator that I hired followed him from American Airlines, where he still worked, out to Queens, and they lost him on the Long Island Expressway. So then I had a second, because I've been written up in the paper every year since 1980, and they would follow my stories. So the second private investigator found my son, and he was in PS 221 in Queens. But by the time we got there, he was gone. And then I realized, oh, they're part of this also. So when you think it's between two parents, it's not between two parents. There's a lot going on behind your back that you don't realize. And so my son at that time asked the nurse, "Where's my mother?" Did anybody follow up on it? No, they didn't. So the schools are not educated to this particular subject of parental kidnapping. So then I would just search and search and search until one day I always had my ex-husband's picture on my website with wanted under it. And so a lady called me up from Washington, D.C. and said, "I think I saw your husband, but that's not his name." I said, "Well, could you tell me what his name is?" And she says, "Only if you never tell anybody who I am." And I said, "I promise you that, I won't." And his name was now Stephen Sanders. So then, after that, I had to trace that down and found out that his wife, who he married a long time ago, who knew about what was going on, also changed her name to Barbara Sanders. And so I had to trace that down. But one thing they didn't change, and that was my son's middle name. So I traced down through that his name is Lewis, and they didn't change the middle name. So I was pretty sure that this was my son. So I went to that house in Arlington, Virginia. And I went to the door and I met his wife. And I said, "Are you married to this man?" Because I still didn't know if it's my son or not, because it's a different name. And they said, "Yes, I am. This is the birthday." And I said, "Well, I'm David's real mother." And she said, "Well, I can't talk to you anymore." So then she was part of it. So then I never got to see or speak to my son ever again. It has been 37 years, and he refuses to speak or talk to me. Plus the fact he has a son, and I will never see my grandson. So if you think it stops there, it doesn't stop there. It continues on to the next generation. And so I'm here for all the parents out there that have never seen their children again. Parental alienation starts from the premeditated, before they even take the child. It starts when one person gets the custody and they can't show up today, and they have all these excuses why they can't show up, and they start bad-mouthing the parent from the very beginning. And it's very hard to reverse that once it's done. It's not easy at all. So and if you think it's not here, now on international abductions, there's a Hague Treaty. And the Hague Treaty, unless you have at least $250,000, don't even go there, because I know people have spent $350,000 trying to return their children. Doesn't mean you'll be returned either. And this is a man from Royal Palm Beach who has his child kidnapped to Peru. And it's 18 months already for that. So now, because of this, and I found out, like Mark found out, there's a great need to intervene. I have invented, this is it was in the store, it was in the New York Post when it happened, that was a big story. 30 years later, she finds her son, but he doesn't want to talk to her. So I found the great need to intervene, and I have invented this robot. And what I do is go into the schools, and It teaches about parental alienation, stranger abduction, and the internet. But parental abduction is really the subject that's really hardly ever covered. So it's very effective, and the children love it. It's not a person talking to them. Move them over. And we have been in North Carolina, and we'll probably be back. And this is one of the places where we were in North Carolina. And this is Steve Smith, by the way, and he's in my organization. And this is also Burger King. Burger King sponsored our robot. So in North Carolina, we'll be probably going back. But I found a great need, and it works. So for all the parents out there who have never seen their children again, that's real alienation. And I'm here for them and for everybody else who has experienced this horrible, horrible situation, because you can't reverse it. And I think that Mark is doing a wonderful job by having this program. It is exactly what we need, and I commend him for doing this. Thank you. Yeah.
Marianne, thank you very much, Marianne. Very dramatic, and you can see the headlines from New York and internationally. Marianne has been spearheading the effort, and others. She's been on Maury Povich, and I think there was another program that...
Unsolved Mysteries. My case was on Unsolved Mysteries and different. I keep going on television. I was just on television this morning.
So these stories need to stop only when there are improvements in our society and children have continued access to their parents.